When you're stupid, you don't connect the dots. That's the biggest lesson that I took away from watching Into the Manosphere by Louis Theroux. It's a great documentary on Netflix. And what's interesting about the documentary is the fact that every single one of these people that were spotlighted on the show gets so close to understanding what the real problem is and then go completely a different direction. Here's what I mean. When every one of these personalities was featured on this documentary, you almost got the feeling that they were trying to capture the same shtick that 90s gangster rappers were throwing out there to demonstrate what being a man looks like. Now, when you set that aside, everything that they mentioned seemed to be going in one direction. They talk about how men are ignored, how men aren't seen as worthwhile or having value unless they bring something to the table. And that society is structured in a way to chew up and spit out men. Society is structured in a way where men don't have any value in it unless they're defined by their net worth, their bank account, and the women that they might have on their arms. When you hear all that, those of us who have been around long enough don't really see any difference between that line of thinking and what we heard from Andrew Dice Clay. There isn't really much depth to it. But when you dig into what they're saying, they're talking about a society that doesn't value people within it beyond what those people can produce. It doesn't value actually bringing anything to the table beyond your physicality and your bank account. And you have to ask yourself the question, why is that? What's the root cause of people believing that to be true? And all of these grievances that they list off, where people aren't valued, men aren't valued, you're defined by your net worth. If you aren't achieving at a certain level, you're useless to society and you're a loser. All of that should logically point to the world that we live in. Capitalism has defined for you how you should determine and evaluate your own worth. But rather than point out the fact that they feel this way because the system is rigged against them, and the reason why it's rigged against them is because the billionaire class and the millionaire class have painted an image for them of what success looks like. And what success looks like is perpetual grind and perpetual chasing of some material gain so that you, in the eyes of other men, feel like you have value. That's a feature of this version of capitalist society that we live in. But instead of actually calling that out, you have these people that have generally below room temperature IQs, and all they're doing is saying and doing things to get attention, and they've turned into these personas that they've created, and who do they blame for the situation that they're in? Instead of blaming the system that they're operating in, they point the finger at women and or underrepresented groups as the reason for why they are feeling left behind and worthless. If that doesn't tell you about the lack of processing power that everyone on this show has, I don't know what will. It requires a certain level of stupidity to point out all the problems that exist that you are a victim of, and then point the finger at the groups of people who are victimized to a greater degree than you are. And let's be real, there is no more pampered and entitled group of people in the world today than white men. And outside of white men, you'd be silly to say that men don't have it easier in the world than women do. But just because men have it easier doesn't mean that the system that they operate in isn't terrible for everybody involved. And that's the problem with every single person that was on the show, with the exception of Louis Theroux. Every single one of them could list the problems in society and list the problems in society that's specific to men. But only these idiots and their idiot followers could then look at all of that and say, yeah, women, minorities, gay, trans people, those are the people that are causing these issues. And the reason why that conclusion is so silly is that the groups that they just named have zero power in the world. Who is in charge? Who is in charge of all of the levers of power in society? It's by and large men, And more specifically, it's old rich white men that have set the game up to be played this way. So you either have to be willfully ignorant, woefully stupid, or deliberately dishonest to ignore all of that and blame the people that literally have no skin in the game, have no power, and have no ability to impact the way the game is played. That's the big lesson coming out of Louis Theroux's Into the Manosphere. Check out the documentary. It's a great watch, and there's a reason why they don't like it when anybody that challenges them is in their ecosystem, because they get exposed for how fragile, weak, and stupid they are.